We're back. I'm back. Well-read Ray is back. This video is basically going to be my January wrap up and then books that I hope to get to in February. I don't really do TBRs because I do consider myself to be a mood reader, but these are the books that I'm feeling at this moment and that I hope I do get to in February. I'm going to start with the books that I actually finished in January and how I felt about them. Don't jump me, please, if you've heard of this book before and you really loved it. It's not that I didn't love it, it's not what I was expecting. And that is The Art of Racing in the Rain by Garth Stein. I heard of this book from another book called Lonely Hearts Book Club. It's a book about books, basically. And this book was mentioned. It's written from the perspective of a dog. And as a dog owner, I am very interested in what my dog is thinking and what animals think. I thought that that was a very cool premise for a book. It started off that way, and then it just went in a direction that I was not expecting. I'm going to spoil something, so if you have not read this book before, jump to this part of the video. So if you look at the cover, it says The Art of Racing in the Rain. And for some reason, I just assumed that that meant that this was gonna, dogs like to run in the rain, maybe. Not my dog, but I've seen dogs do that before. They get excited when it rains or it snows and they're just out there in all the elements. I thought that's what this book was going to be. But no, The Art of Racing in the Rain is actually referring to race car driving. And I do not care about race car driving. There are a bunch of race car analogies in this book. I don't have any bias towards male authors. I just tend to read a lot of women authors, but I just started thinking, of course a man did this. But the thing is that it's not written badly, and that's when I started thinking, I was like, this is really an issue of like taste and preference, not like whether this is actually good or not. So I tried to read it for what it was, and still, it was just the author's choices I just kind of had an issue with. So that was the whole thing with that. So we're out of the spoiler part. It says a heart-wrenching but deeply funny and ultimately uplifting story of family, loyalty, and hope. A captivating look at the wonders and absurdities of human life as only a dog could tell it. The dog's name is Enzo. I believe he's named after a race car driver. He's living with, who is the name of his owner? Denny. His owner's name is Denny. I already forgot it. It starts off at the end of Enzo's life. And then he starts telling the story of his life from a puppy up until the point that he's at now. It was cool to read Enzo's voice. I didn't really like his voice. Like, as a dog, I'm like, can't you be a little bit more like animated and colorful? But he was like a very no nonsense, sense filled dog. And so that was interesting. So it's told like his experiences, his relationships with his family members, with his owners. And so like all their big moments is kind of how he views them. And it's really cool to get like the dog, like the nuance of how he's seeing the situation versus what's actually happening. It was cool. It was cool. And like a 3-star, a 3.5 is not a bad book. I think that's just the only thing that I could feel to give it. I think that for me to have given it a 4-star, I would have had to have felt more, and I just didn't. If you're interested in dogs and reading a book that's written from the perspective of a dog, reading a book written by a male author, this could be the book for you. I get why people love it. I just feel like it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And it's, again, not that it's a bad book, it just wasn't, maybe it wasn't written for me, maybe it's not my preference. And I guess that's why I don't have so much to say about it, so I'm sorry if that review sucked. But that was the first book of the year, 3.5 stars. I'm also going to use my book journal, to help me make sure I don't really miss anything that I wanted to say. So in my book journal, you guys saw this in the last video if you watched it, but I put my thoughts about the book and then quotes that I really love. So what I wrote in my thoughts section is, this was a hype read. I've heard great things, and also the premise is a dream. Getting to be inside a dog's head, priceless, and yet it wasn't what I was hoping for. Even though the story arguably ends on a somewhat optimistic note, it overall did not inspire a lot of positivity out of me. I wonder about the author's choices. Why did the central conflicts? Why did the central conflicts the dog was witness to even have to be a part of this story? It made his life seem so short and sad. Maybe that was the point. I don't know. And by questioning that, we get into the subjective nature of creative choice and if it's okay to dock a book points based on that as opposed to just bad writing. And I wouldn't say that the writing was bad. At the end of the day, this book did not make for a strong reading start to the year, but it did evoke a little feeling out of me. I very much liked the beginning, Gestures Are All I Have, and the ending, sad but beautiful. So yeah, I think I pretty much hit on everything I wanted to say. And I did put in parentheses, such a man book. Yeah. So, and then the quotes, I will read one quote that I really, really liked. There was this one concept in the book that I thought it kept repeating itself, and it's also something that I've seen come up in other books that I read this month. The car goes where your eyes go. And it was kind of just like what you focus on is what you manifest, what you become. I don't know if that's the same thing as manifest destiny, but it made me think. And then the book kind of went on to describe like the situations that we find ourselves in, what we perceive them to be is what they are. The car goes where your eyes go. You know, the car is going to go in the direction that you're looking. Your life is going to go in the direction that you are paying the most attention to. The situations that we are in, we have the power to change them if we just perceive things differently. And that was something, even though the book to me was a little mid, I'm sorry, that quote stuck with me. And it's something that I always think about. But your car goes where your eyes go. You're not going to go straight if you're looking to the side. You're going to start veering off to the side. And so I just thought that was really cool. And actually the book that I finished yesterday that we'll get to later, I think that kind of came up in there too. And it's just like, when I start seeing something over and over again, it's resonating with me. And I think there's a reason for that. So it's making me think about what I need to actually focus on. So again, even though I didn't like the book too much, I would recommend it because I think that there's a reason that 4 million copies of the book have been sold and that it's an NYT bestseller. So it's not that I'm not recommending it. It just didn't do it for me. I have to stop reading books that have been very hyped up. But yeah, that's that. The second book that I read this month was What a Time to Be Alive by Jenny Mustard. This is a literary fiction book that I was very excited to read. It was actually on my 10 before the end for 2025. This is another book from Kat's Field Notes. She mentioned it on her channel. I can't remember if she said she liked it or not, but the premise of the book was very interesting to me. It is about a girl. Her name is Siv, and she's going off to college. It's a coming of age story, and basically she's never felt in her life that she fits in anywhere. She's always been a social outcast. She cares a lot what people think about her. She has social anxiety. And so now she's getting ready to go off to college, and she feels like this is the time for her to fit in with people. And remember what I said before, if you've seen my 10 best books of 2025, literary fiction to me is not something that you read when you want a good plot. Like, it's more about existential feelings. So plot wise, you know, this wasn't what I was reading it for. I read it because there were things about it that I felt that I could relate to. I know for me, I was the new kid in high school. I came from a middle school that didn't feed into the high school, so everybody there already had built-in friends from like kindergarten, and I was the new person, and I felt like I had to fit, and I didn't fit anywhere. And so the idea, like the excitement of being invited somewhere by somebody or finding your tribe, like I understand that yearning. And so I wanted to read a story about it. And it was not bad. I did enjoy it. I got a lot of good quotables about it. But some of the choices made by the author, I wondered about. Like the love, the romantic part. There was a love interest in this story. And I'm just like, I'm not feeling this. So that was one thing. And then also, I think there was just kind of like a cultural divide, maybe. Again, like I mentioned with Perfection, I thought it was very cool to see like the emotional aspects, how similarly a person going to college on the other side of the world can feel, and then I can be feeling that same way over here in America. Like that was very cool to me, same feeling, different font. But I do think that there was a cultural divide because I don't know if this book was translated into English, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was. But just like the words that were used things that were mentioned or referenced. Like, I'm coming from an American POV, and I'm glad that I'm reading things like this because it's getting me out of my comfort zone and getting me used to reading literature from like different areas. Maybe over time it will not feel so foreign to me and I'll be a little bit more used to it. But I think that was something that was kind of, it felt like a barrier to me. Like, I couldn't really get into the story because some of the things that were being mentioned, I just could not, I didn't know what was being talked about. So that was this book, What a Time to Be Alive. And I also, like I did with the other one, I want to read what my feelings were about it and then maybe a favorite quote that I had. Let's see. What a Time to Be Alive. Thoughts. I definitely didn't hate it. I was actually very intrigued by the premise, but it didn't land for me, at least not completely. This probably had to do with the fact that the setting is Sweden. The author is Swedish. Very sweet things are referenced, and I assume that the book was translated from Swedish to English, which accounts for how it read. I would be remiss to say the book is not good or not good for that reason. It was relatable, and while I didn't have a problem putting it down when I was reading, it flowed. So basically everything I said, I think I hit on everything. I did put at the top, what Civ represents has a special place in my heart. It is hard to be rejected, hard to hold on to past slights with no outlet, but we move on. So yeah, I think I pretty much hit everything on the head about that. And then some quotes that I really liked from it. She says, the main character Civ, what is me? So preoccupied with not being weird, I always err on the side of caution. My clothes and my hair, although perfectly modern, say nothing about my personality. Truth is, I am not sure what my personality is, or if I even have one after all this time copying others. And then another one, I know what he meant, me hiding myself to fit in, but it is hard to show who you are when you don't know yet. And that one really hit me hard. Like, it really hit me hard. She grows throughout the book, and I think that was the most satisfying thing to me. Like, she did kind of come into a sense of herself, but she still, even as the book ended, had a ways to go and was probably going to mature and grow and even like more, ways. So that was my experience with that. So that was my second book of January. And my third and last book, which I finished yesterday during the blizzard, is Viola Davis's Finding Me. You probably already knew that if you watched my video. I gave this book 4 stars. This was the absolute best book that I read in January, and I will have more to say about it since I literally just finished it. I love reading other people's stories because it's a way for you to learn things without actually having to go through it yourself, even though I do think that experience is the best teacher. This book, first of all, her story is like literally unbelievable. Editing Rayma here, I realized that I just introduced this book and this woman with the assumption that everybody watching this knows who she is. Viola Davis is an amazing actress, and basically all of you need to go watch How to Get Away with Murder if you haven't. I cannot believe that she grew up in the conditions that she grew up in. I feel like I've had trouble forgiving people for a lot less than what she went through, and that really stuck out to me. Say a person wasn't raised well. They had home life troubles. Lots of people, I think, would tend to maybe hold anger or resentment towards their parents. And she had every reason to resent her parents, but she honors them. The way that she treats them, what she does for them, it's just like there's no room in her heart for hate. She never talks about being angry with her parents. She talks about wanting to be better than them and not go through what they went through, but she's not angry at them. And this is just a 293 page story. There could be things that she's leaving out there. I'm pretty sure there is, because she's lived a life. But like in the pages of this book, like what stood out to me is that she's not expressing anger or resentment towards her parents. She honors them. She literally calls her mom one of the great loves of her life. And even though her dad was not the best dad or husband at times, by the end of his life, she just has this respect for him. And I respect her for that. And that was one of the most amazing things to me, that she just kept that purity, like that softness. She didn't let what she went through make her hard. That was very inspiring. I liked the amount of time that she spent on how to get away with murder. Because also, like, when I read Kerry Washington's book, I was like, I really want her to talk about scandal because I love scandal. So I was really excited to read things about how to get away with murder that I did not know. There were things that I noticed about the show when I was watching it, and I made a note of it, but hearing her describe like why that creative choice was made was like so fulfilling to me. I really enjoyed that. Time magazine called this unflinching, and I would have to completely agree because she's disclosing things in this book that I probably could not talk about. But she also says that secrets are the things that swallow us up, and everybody has secrets. You can either allow those secrets to control you and keep you in darkness and shame, or you can let them out and let people know about it. And that made me think of Perish, which is a book that I read last year that probably should have ended up on my top 10 list, but it was about like certain things that go on in Black families specifically, and how the secrecy around it and the shame is what's like causing the perpetuation of those things. And like, she names stuff and she names people in this book who have done things, and it's not in a way that's like shaming them, but it's just like, this is what happened. And things that happened in her family, like certain abuses, and like there's pictures of the people in here who might have been perpetuating some of that abuse because they're a part of her family. And I'm not saying it's like it's weird to say because a lot of people don't like to disclose other people's information. I don't know the dynamics of her family and if that caused any issues, but it's just like, I have to imagine that it's very healing for her to not have to censor anything. So it is very unflinching. I like the deadpanness, I guess, that she talked about these events with, but it's not flat. There is emotion, but it's just level, and it's like, this is what happened. And I appreciate that she's just so unflinching with her admissions, with what she's talking about. Now, what I didn't like about the book is that while it's written beautifully, altogether it reads like a stream of consciousness. And I saw other people say this on Goodreads, and I have to agree because I was getting confused. Like, sometimes we'll be reading about an event and then we would jump forward 5 years, and without really much like transition, we'd be back in the past. And it's kind of like she would jump from this one thing and then we'd go 10 years into the future, and then we'd come back, or we'd go somewhere else. And that was confusing to me. And so now, one quote from her story that I liked. Let me give you some background. So in this quote, she's talking about how to get away with murder. And I don't think that it would be spoiling it to tell you that people had thoughts about her being the lead character in that show. She talks about in the book like colorism and like Black women in leading roles on TV, and how they're often typecast into like maybe a white main character's sidekick, or even in like a Black show, the light-skinned main character's sidekick, and they come in, they might deliver like one really good line, and that's their highlight. They're not a fully realized character. And so she's playing someone that people before the show like came out, when they heard that it's her that's playing this role, they were just like, she's not pretty enough for that, all this stuff. So this is her response in the book to that. She says, I felt like I had two choices: either apologize for who I was and try to alter how I looked to meet their standards and try to fit into what the masses were saying, or I could stay true to myself and make Annalise me, what I look like, what I sound like. I was at the point in my life where I chose me. And that speaks to me. It also reminds me of what was said in Mama Tina's memoir, Matriarch, where she said, you don't have to change yourself to fit somebody else's idea of success. You be yourself as life brings you different challenges, and that's your own version of it. That's kind of what that reminded me of. And also that whole thing about your eyes going where your car goes. I know she said something else in here that's kind of like that. Oh yeah, there's a quote in here from Oprah Winfrey that made me think about the art of racing in the rain. And Oprah says, I know for sure what we dwell on is what we become. And that's like the same thing as your car goes where your eyes go. Like, it's what you're focusing on. It's your perspective. It's how you're perceiving it. It all starts in the mind. We got to fix our thoughts. It's a really hard thing to do, but we really have to do that. So yes. Those were my 3 reads for January. It was not the best reading month to me. Somebody else might be like, girl, are you crazy? Those are great books. And they were good books. I wouldn't say they fell flat, but it was kind of like meh. But Finding Me was really good. So, and now we're gonna get to the books that I hope to read in February. But first, a coffee break. Okay, we are back, and Princess Nala is with us because she really wanted to get in my lap. So we've done what I read in January, and now we're moving on to February. By the way, happy February 1st. It is the month of love, but it is also, very importantly, Black History Month. And so this month, there are 4 books that I want to get through. Half and half. They're like Black history themed and then romance themed. If you watch some of my past videos, you probably know that I don't have a problem with romance books, but I need there to be something to the story, whether that's a historical element, some magic thrown in there. And so I'm very excited about my picks for romance this month. I'm just excited in general. I think February is going to be a great reading month. First, we have, and this is the order that I want to try to read them in, and I have a logical reason for that, which I will explain. But the first book that I want to read is Atmosphere. So excited to read this. First of all, I love Taylor Jenkins Reid. I've only read 2 books by her. The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and also Carrie Soto is Back. Loved both of them. Felt like both of them needed to be movies or limited series or something on TV, something on the screen. Sorry, Nala. And so this, if you can tell, Atmosphere. And I'm sure many of you have heard of this book. This is a love story. So this is one of our romance reads for this month. But it's set in the 1980s. There's a backdrop of NASA and outer space. And I love outer space. Like, I love astronomy. One of my favorite episodes of Blue's Clues growing up was the one with the planets. It was some sort of song that they were singing. I just love that. I love that so much. So anyway, I love outer space, and I love a romance with some depth, with some oomph to it, and I love Taylor Jenkins Reid. So I already really enjoyed her last 2 books. I love space, and I just think that she's gonna give me what I want. I think she's gonna do it for me. So I'm just very excited. If you don't know what it's about, I'm going to read the flap on the inside. And look at this. I think that's just so pretty. I love space. Okay. It says, an epic new novel set against the backdrop of the 1980s space shuttle program about the extraordinary lengths we go to live and love beyond our limits. Joan Goodwin has been obsessed with the stars for as long as she can remember. She is content with her life as a professor of physics and astronomy and as aunt to her precocious niece Frances until she comes across an advertisement seeking the first women scientists to join NASA's space shuttle program. Suddenly, Joan burns to be one of the few people to go to space. Selected from a pool of thousands of applicants in the summer of 1980, Joan begins training at Houston's Johnson Space Center alongside an exceptional group of fellow candidates, Top Gun pilot Hank Redman and scientist John Griffin, easygoing even when the stakes are high, mission specialist Lydia Danes, who has worked too hard to play nice, warm-hearted Donna Fitzgerald, navigating her own secrets, and Vanessa Ford, the magnetic and mysterious aeronautical engineer who can fix any engine and fly any plane. As they become unlikely friends and prepare for their first flights, Joan finds a love she never imagined. In this new light, Joan begins to question everything she thinks she knows about her place in the observable universe. Then, in December of 1984, on mission STS-LR9, it all changes in an instant. Fast-paced, thrilling, and emotional, Atmosphere is Taylor Jenkins Reid at her best, telling a passionate and soaring story about the transformative power of love, this time among the stars. And you see how romance was not mentioned until way down in that description. I'm so excited for this book. I've had it on my shelf. I got it sometime last year, so it hasn't been on there too long, but I keep looking at it. I'm like, when am I going to read this book? The time has come for me to read this book, and I'm so excited to read it and share my thoughts with you. The next book on the list is a book club book, and I love this book club because I want to always make sure that I'm getting a steady diet of Black authored books, because I'll read anything, but I want to make sure that I'm also reading Black authors. I'm gonna do that anyway, but I just feel like they're a great source of Black books, but also Black books that I have not heard of, because I've never heard of this author of this book. And so it's just a great way to read things that I never would have picked up on my own, but also things that relate to me. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, so their first read is The Seven Daughters of Dupree by nikesha Elise Williams. Never heard of this book, but I was reading the inside flap earlier and I saw that it is a multi-generational story. And the last book that we read like that was Grown Women by Sarah Johnson. That was a 5-star book and I loved it. It was also a generational story about women. So I'm very excited for it. And I believe it starts in 1990. I was going to say 1994. It starts in 1995. It's set there, but then it visits other time periods. So I'm very excited to read it. And when you open it up, it has like this family tree, which is always helpful in situations like these. So I'm gonna read to you the flap of this one because I can't even give you like a general spiel because I really don't know. I tried to read over it earlier, but it didn't stay in my mind. It says, from the 2-time Emmy Award-winning producer and host of the Black and Published podcast comes a sweeping multi-generational epic following 7 generations of Dupree women as they navigate love, loss, and the unyielding ties of family. In the tradition of Homegoing, which I really like that book, by Yasi, and the love songs of W.E.B. Du Bois. It's 1995, and 14-year-old Tati is determined to find out the identity of her father, but her mother, Nadia, keeps her secrets close, while her grandmother, Gladys, remains silent about the family's past, including why she left Land's End, Alabama in 1953. As Tati digs deeper, she uncovers a legacy of family secrets, where every generation of Dupree women has posed more questions than answers. From Juby in 1917, whose attempt to pass for white ends when she gives birth to Ruby, to Ruby's fiery lust for Samson in 1934, which leads to a baby of her own, to the night in 1980 that changed Nadia's future forever, the Dupree women carry the weight of their heritage. Bound by a mysterious malediction that means they will only give birth to daughters, the Dupree women confront a legacy of pain, resilience, and survival that began with an enslaved ancestor who risked everything for freedom. The Seven Daughters of Dupree masterfully weaves together themes of generational trauma, Black women's resilience, and unbreakable familial bonds. Echoing the powerful writing of The 12 Tribes of Hattie by Ayanna Mathis, nikesha Elise Williams delivers a feminist literary fiction that explores the ripple effects of actions, secrets, and love through 7 generations of Black women. That sounds amazing. I'm excited to see, honestly, what the secrets are. I know this is about to be something that's probably going to break my heart or like really upset me, but also I feel like it's going to be good. But anyway, that is The Seven Daughters of Dupree by nikesha. I'm going to call her Nikesha. Hopefully that's right. Nikesha Elise Williams. I'm very excited to read this. And this is going to be book number 2. I'm going to start Atmosphere tonight. And if it takes me about a week to read, then I can start this one. And it'll be done by our book club meeting, which I think is on February 17th, if that's a Tuesday. So yeah, second read of the month. Regardless, I'm going to be reading this because it is a book club read. That's also why I like book club, because it keeps me accountable. So, third book that I plan to read is another book that is Black History Month themed, and that is Yellow Wife by Sadeqa Johnson. I read The House of Eve by Sadeqa Johnson last year, and I loved it so much. I loved the dual POVs. I love that it was historical fiction. I love that it was set in 2 places that I am familiar with, but mostly like Washington, D.C., Howard University, that I know kind of really well. And so, and her writing style, the pacing was great. Like, it was just a really good story. And I know that this book, it's not a series, but it's like connected to that book. And also the book that she's just come out with, or is coming out with, The Keeper of Lost Children, I think is what it's called. Like, all of these books that she's written are not in a series, but they are connected. And so I'm excited to read this one because I know it has something to do with a character that I guess we love to hate from The House of Eve. So I'm very excited to read it for that reason. And I didn't want too much time to pass between reading that book and this one. I know that it is a slave era narrative. That's why I'm reading it in the position that I'm reading it in, because I want to follow it up with something that's going to maybe exert some joy in me. It might be a little heavy, I'm expecting that, but I also know that it's going to be really good. I think a lot of people have talked very highly about this, but it says, One woman's captivating tale of survival in the most notorious slave prison of the antebellum South. Born on a plantation in Charles City, Virginia, Phoebe Dolores Brown has lived a sheltered life. Shielded by her mother's position as the estate's medicine woman and cherished by the master's sister, she is set apart from the others on the plantation, belonging to neither world. She'd been promised freedom on her 18th birthday, but instead of the idyllic life she imagined with her true love, Essex Henry, Phoebe is forced to leave the only home she has ever known. She unexpectedly finds herself thrust into the bowels of slavery at the infamous Devil's Half Acre, a jail in Richmond, Virginia, where the enslaved are broken, tortured, and sold every day. There, Phoebe is exposed not just to her jailer's cruelty, but also to his contradictions. To survive, Phoebe will have to outwit him, even if it means making the ultimate sacrifice. So, it's definitely going to be heavy. I felt that from reading that, but I know it's going to be really good. And I'm excited. Excited to read more Sadeqa Johnson. And last, we're going to end the month with the romance because I feel like Yellow Wife is going to be very heavy. And this is a book that I hope to get to in 2025, but I didn't. So we're going to get to it this year. And that is Funny Story by Emily Henry. I've only read one Emily Henry book, and that was People We Meet on Vacation. I think I gave it 5 stars, which was, I feel, generous, but I'm excited about this one. I've heard great things about it. I've heard great things about the audiobook. What I'm thinking I will do is I will read this book while listening to the audiobook because I want that experience. And people have said that it's really good. So then I think it will be uplifting after Yellow Wife. But it says, it's a funny story. Daphne always loved the way her fiance Peter told their story, how they met on a blustery day, fell in love over an errant hat, and moved back to his lakeside hometown to begin their life together. He really was good at telling it, right up until the moment he realized he was actually in love with his childhood best friend, Petra, which is how Daphne begins her new story, stranded in beautiful Waning Bay, Michigan, without friends or family, but with a dream job as a children's librarian that barely pays the bills, and proposing to be roommates with the only person who could possibly understand her predicament, Petra's ex, Miles Nowak, scruffy and chaotic with a penchant for taking solace in the sounds of heartbreak. Solace? How do you say that word? Solace in the sounds of heartbreak love ballads. Miles is exactly the opposite of practical, buttoned-up Daphne, whose co-workers know so little about her they have a running bet that she's either FBI or in witness protection. The roommates mainly avoid one another until one day, while drowning their sorrows, they form a tenuous friendship and a plan. If said plan also involves posting deliberately misleading photos of their summer adventures together, well, who could blame them? But it's all just for show, of course, because there's no way Daphne would actually start her new chapter by falling in love with her new fiance's ex, right? The mess. It sounds very messy and funny, and I think I'm going to love it. I think that I'm probably going to relate a lot to Daphne because it says that her coworkers know so little about her. They have a running bet that she's either FBI or witness protection. That is me, probably, because I feel like the modern workplace is a trap, and I'm not falling for it. I'm not here to be friends with y'all. I'm here to get my paycheck and go home. So anyway, I'm excited to read it for that reason too, because I didn't know that we had, she sounds like we might have something in common personality-wise. So anyway, that is Funny Story, and this will be my last book, my last read, hopefully, for February. I'm excited to finally be getting to this book, and I will be reading it in conjunction with listening to the audiobook. So yeah, that is my list of February hopefuls, in addition to the 3 books that I read in January. And now it's time for the thumbnail. No. Oh. Okay, but yes, that is my what I read in January wrap up and what I hope to read in February preview. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Let me know down below what you read in January, how you liked it, and what you're planning on reading this month if you are a sort of, kind of, but not really TBR person like myself. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.